السلام عليكم. من الطالب ركان حداد من كلية الطب في الجامعة الأردنية. Today we're going to be explaining the 8th lecture of Neoplasia. هحاول أكون سريع، يعني أشياء كتير راح أفشق عنها هيك because يعني إن شاء الله المحاضرة تكون سهلة وسريعة وحنخلصها بسرعة. Okay. Etiology of cancer يعني مسببات الكانسر. The causes of cancer هم carcinogenic agents. تذكرون كنا نحكي mutations، كنا نحكي chemicals، كنا نحكي مثلا bacteria, viruses، يعني في كتير أشياء they can cause cancer. They're carcinogenic. Okay. Carcinogenic agents they inflict genetic damage. إذا شو الميكانيزم of action؟ تيجي الكارسينوجينيك agent بيدخل على الدي ان اي، بيسلم عليه وبيخربه، يعني بيجي بيضحك عليه وبيكحشه، يعني بكل بساطة. اوكي. They are gonna cause genetic damage. This lies at the heart of carcinogenesis. يعني the base of carcinogenesis انك انت تروح على الدي ان اي and to do genetic damage. Okay. There are three classes of carcinogenic agents اللي هم chemicals, radiant energy, and microbial products. Chemicals مواد كيماوية، radiant energy, X-rays, UV rays. Microbial products, Helicobacter pylori virus, bacteria virus, okay, Helicobacter pylori bacteria, hepatitis B virus مثلا, Epstein-Barr virus. في كتير viruses they can cause cancer، وكتير بكتيريا بيقدروا يعملوا cancer. okay. أول شيء نبلش بالchemical carcinogens. أول شيء direct acting وفي عندك indirect acting. أوكي، يعني عندي نوعين من الchemical carcinogens، واحدة direct واحدة indirect. شو برأيكم الفرق؟ What is the difference here? The direct acting is not going to need metabolization، يعني على السريع بيدخل بيعمل damage. It enters and causes the damage. بينما indirect acting it needs to be metabolized. شو يعني metabolized؟ changed. اوكي، مش انه نكسره، لا، change، ممكن نضيف عليه اشياء، we can add, we can remove, whatever. So it needs to be metabolically converted to something called the carcinogen. Okay, so it's an indirect chemical تحول ل أو indirect carcinogen تحول ل direct carcinogen. أولا direct acting, they're typically weak carcinogens. يعني they're weak. Direct acting when they enter the body they're considered weak carcinogens. يعني the chance of them causing cancer أصلا is weak. طيب give me an example on direct carcinogens. الكيموثيرابي، الكيمو اللي بينعطى للناس معهم كانسر. Chemotherapy that is given to people with cancer. طب تتخيل you're giving someone a cancerous product, you're giving someone a cancerous chemical. Yes, you are. لكن it's a weak carcinogen. The probability of it causing cancer is really low. تمام? An example is alkylating agents. طبعا one of them. They can cause or evoke a subsequent second form of cancer, usually leukemia. It's kind of similar to what we studied in مثلا microbiology or pharmacology. You know, when you take a specific antibiotic, you're ruining the normal flora, causing a secondary infection and whatever. يعني فاهم كيف؟ This is kind of the same situation here. إنه you can get a second form of cancer. Not anyone else. يعني someone with cancer. If you give chemotherapy to, they will usually develop, not usually, sorry, they might يعني develop leukemia if given a direct chemical carcinogen. بس بيحكي لك هذا. Okay. طيب. And the form is usually leukemia. يعني على الأغلب the cancers that develop are usually leukemia. تمام? Because you're basically putting the chemical direct acting agent in the blood. Okay? طيب. Anyways, and the associated risk is low. يعني لا شيء. The designation indirect acting يعني we need metabolic conversion to the carcinogen. Okay? One of the most potent ones, they're called polycyclic hydrocarbons. Polycyclic, multiple cycles. Hydrocarbons, we know them, carbon hydrogen chains, okay? They're created with the burning of fossil fuels, plants, and animal material. Quick information for you to know, when we want to cook rice, بيجوا الأمهات مرات بيحطوا فحم هيك وبيسكروا الليد. This is a really dangerous carcinogen, okay? Really dangerous, تمام? Because it gives out, it's basically the coal is the indirect, the fuels that arise from it are indirect carcinogens. When they enter your body, they're going to cause the cancer. Okay, the smokes that come out of the burning of the coal and stuff, when you put it with the rice, it's actually carcinogenic, an indirect carcinogen. Okay. For example, عندك الbenzo A pyrene and other carcinogens formed during the combustion of tobacco are implicated in the causation of lung cancer. بيجي بيسألك one of the causations of lung cancer نعرف هي smoking. Okay, then when I think about lung cancer, we're thinking about smoking. طيب ليش smoking بالذات؟ because عم تحصل أنت على السموك ماتيريال. هاي السموك ماتيريال فيها benzo A pyrene. Okay. benzoapyrene, and this benzoapyrene basically comes when you burn tobacco, when you burn specific sorts of coal, whatever يعني, okay? وبرضه إذا benzoapyrene can cause lung cancer, and then it can cause scrotal cancer in chimney sweeps, okay? major chemical carcinogens. هلا بنرجع بدنا بس نصنف يعني نحكي direct نحكي أمثلة عليها والindirect نحكي أمثلة عليها. direct acting carcinogens عندك two types: alkylating agents and acylating agents. alkylating agents يعني they will add an alkyl group, acylating they will add an acyl يعني okay. طيب alkylating طبعا هذا كله they're talking with the DNA now, okay? They wanna go head to head with the DNA, face the DNA. عندك beta propiolactone, dimethyl sulfate, diepoxybutane, and anti-cancer drugs like cyclophosphamide, chlorambucil, nitrosurias, and others, okay? هذول كلهم بنسميهم alkylating agents. They are direct acting carcinogens. You need to memorize إن هذول alkylating, okay? You need to memorize that they are alkylating. بينما acylating عندك تنين: 1 acetyl imidazole and dimethyl carbamyl chloride, okay? ويعني يلا بينكو شيء بده حفظ احفظوه يعني وشو بدنا نعمل. Pro-carcinogens, they require metabolic activation. They will enter the body. They will be converted to other active molecules. الأمثلة على indirect ones اللي هم benz A-anthracene, A-pyrene, dibenz AH anthracene. يعني أي شيء فيه benz، اوكي لاحظ انه أي شيء مثلا فيه أي شيء فيه benz هذا حيكون indirect. dibenz عادي نفس الشيء anthracenes, okay. 3-methylcholanthyrine, okay. 7,12-dimethyl-benz A-anthracene. Then we can say that anything that has benz in it can act as a polycyclic and heterocyclic aromatic hydrocarbon that is indirect. في نوع تاني هم the aromatic amines and azo-dyes, okay. They're also indirect ones. هلا نرجع لهم. Polycyclic hydrocarbons can be produced from animal fats during the process of broiling meats, and it's present in smoked meats and fish. So basically they're just telling you that when you smoke meats or broil meat or fish or whatever, it's really dangerous because you can produce these polycyclic hydrocarbons, and basically you're just eating an indirect carcinogen, okay? In the body, مثلا benzoapyrene is metabolized to epoxides. حلو. These epoxides can actually form covalent adducts. إيش يعني adducts؟ يعني they're adding, okay? They're adding stuff, okay? Addition products within molecules in the cell, principally DNA, but also with RNA and proteins. You know what they can do? اللي هم epoxides. They can form covalent adducts with the DNA, with the RNA and proteins. أكيد the main form is binding with the DNA. تمام? The epoxide goes, creates specific bonds with the DNA. Obviously, anything that enters from outside the body that we don't need is gonna and it binds to the DNA, is gonna harm it. Okay. Well, harming it, and it's going to cause mutations. Mutations are carcinogens, okay? Or the base of carcinogenesis. Anyway, the aromatic amines and azo-dyes constitute indirect acting carcinogens, and like beta-naphthylamine was responsible for a 50-fold increased incidence of bladder cancers in heavily exposed workers in the aniline dye and rubber industries. حلو. إذن beta naphthylamine. We're studying هلا amines and azo-dyes. انتقلنا عن polycyclic hydrocarbons. هلا صار المجموعة الثانية. The aromatic amines and the azo-dyes. Obviously, we would expect people that work in the aniline dye and rubber industries, or work with them, to get this carcinogen, okay? It creates a 50-fold incidence of 50-fold incidence of bladder cancer, okay? Increases the chances of getting the bladder cancer. Aflatoxin B1 is a naturally occurring agent. It's actually produced by Aspergillus. This is a mold, okay? We studied that in microbiology. A mold that grows on improperly stored grains and nuts. Okay, ممكن انت حاط كيلو فستق ولا كيلو كاشو ابصر وين حاطهم بالخزانه بعتمه ودنيا ومويستشر. It formed an appropriate medium for Aspergillus to form, which causes the aflatoxin B1 to be produced, and it's actually toxic material. It's a carcinogen. تمام? A strong correlation has been found between the dietary level of this food contaminant and the incidence of hepatocellular carcinoma. Obviously, this is a toxin. Toxin is going to go to the liver to be purified. So we would expect the liver أول شيء يصير له الكانسر. So hepatocellular carcinoma, okay? In some parts of Africa and the Far East. جميل. Vinyl chloride, arsenic, nickel, chromium, insecticides, fungicides, and polychlorinated biphenyls are potential carcinogens in the workplace and about the house. We always hear from our parents هذا مواد كيماوية ابعد رشينا ابصر شو ابعد دير بالك تاكل من هاي الشجرة لسه ما رشوش عليها دير بالك ابصر شو يعني we know that anything chemical خلينا نحكي has the opportunity to cause cancer. Okay, so this is really easy to understand. تمام. Nitrites used as food preservatives since they cause nitrosylation of amines contained in food producing nitrous amines that are suspected to be carcinogenic. Okay, هون جدول بيحكي لك انه انت عندك direct acting carcinogen مثلا alkylating agents. Okay, الالكيليتنج agents اخذنا بيتا بروبيولاكتون دايميثيل سلفيت دايبوكسيبيوتين and اللي هم الانتي كانسر دراجز. بيجي بيحكي لك هون الالكيليتنج agents they can cause leukemia. حلوين. طيب هلا we go into detail. Beta propiolactone can cause lymphoma. Okay, dimethyl sulfate Hodgkin's lymphoma. تمام, and so on. يعني it's not really that big of a deal. Acylating agents بحكي لك you have مثلا 1-acetylimidazole, dimethyl carbamyl chloride, and so on. يعني the same things that we just talked about, now you want to just memorize them in detail. Okay, مثلا benzoapyrene حكيناها is due to the combustion of tobacco and coal causes lung and scrotal cancer. Okay, beta naphthylamine هاي for aniline dyes and ozone يعني rubber industry bladder cancers 50-fold increase حكينا. Aflatoxin B1 from aspergillus, it can cause hepatocellular carcinoma. Betel nuts due to chewing can cause oral carcinoma. Benzene and so on. You just want to memorize them. الله بعينكم. Mechanisms of action of the chemical carcinogens. Most chemical carcinogens are mutagenic. They cause mutations. Okay, يعني this is the main function of them. They enter and they cause mutations. All direct carcinogens حكينا أصلا عنهم they're weak. They're considered weak ones. They have highly reactive electrophile groups. شو يعني electrophile? Electro is negative. Phile is loving. So it loves negative. A negative lover. شو يعني negative lover? مين الإشي اللي بينجذب للنيجاتيف؟ هو البوزيتيف. Okay? So an electrophile is something that is positively charged. حلوين. Yes, متعجز أكتب هيك خلاص charged. Okay. That form chemical adducts with DNA as well as with proteins and with RNA. then بكل بساطة these direct carcinogens they bind they bind to the DNA and proteins and RNA and whatever. Any gene may be the target of chemical carcinogens as RAS and the tumor suppressor gene T53. يعني بحكي لك any gene can be a target. فيشي والله يعني obviously there are specific things that attack specific genes, but here they're telling you, when someone intakes a specific carcinogen, it can cause mutations in multiple or specific specific genes. Aflatoxin B1 it causes mutations in T53. هذا اللي كنت أحكي عنه هلا إنه specific carcinogens can form mutations in specific genes وفي أشياء in multiple genes. Okay. طيب, and we just we need to understand that any gene can be a target. Okay, any gene can be a target. فيش جين محمي هيك. Okay. So aflatoxin B1 تعمل mutations in T53. Carcinogenicity of some chemicals is augmented by subsequent administration of promoters. حلو. Either when someone starts taking specific chemicals like 4-bol esters, hormones, phenols, certain drugs, they can actually act as promoters to the mutations and promoters to the carcinogens. بصيروا شغالين أكتر. Okay? طيب. Repeated or sustained exposure to the promoter, it must follow the application of the mutagenic chemical or initiator. The application of an initiator causes the mutational activation of an oncogene such as RAS. Then when someone applies an initiator or a promoter or whatever, يعني مهم الانيشيتر هون, it causes activation of the mutations of an oncogene like RAS مثلا. Subsequent applications of promoters leads to clonal expansion. يعني you're basically applying promoters حصل عندك شيء اسمه clonal expansion of the already initiated or mutated cells. Okay, so this will cause more proliferation. This will cause خلينا نحكي multiple cell types to be affected and so on. Induction of proliferation of the initiated clone of cells causes additional mutations. Okay, so بكل بساطة when the induction of proliferation of the initiated clone of cells will cause more mutations, and basically they will eventually turn into a malignant tumor. يعني بدهاش شيء. تمام. انت عم بتخلي خلايا اصلا مصابة اصلا مريضة, cells that are already mutated, you're basically inducing more proliferation to them, affecting them more, causing them to become more carcinogenic. radiation carcinogenesis يعني بالله عليك بدها دراسة. لا, بيجي بقول لك you just need UV rays, radiographs, nuclear fission, radionuclides. So these are all considered carcinogens. Okay. Unprotected miners مثلا, people that go mining, they don't, when they go to specific depths, they don't really know what's happening to them. They go home maybe sick after a month or two. في شيء غلط صاير فيهم. The whole idea here is that they're basically taking large doses of خلينا نحكي large doses of radiant energy, maybe from uranium, maybe from whatever يعني. Okay. طيب. So these miners that are in exposure of radioactive elements, they have a 10-fold increased incidence of lung cancer مثلا. Okay. A follow-up study of survivors of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki disclosed a markedly increased incidence of leukemia after an average latent period of about 7 years. يعني شوف, the majority of the people that survived the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki atomic bomb, okay, after 7 years they ended up developing specific cancers like leukemia مثلا. Okay, maybe colon cancers, lung cancers, whatever. هاي بحكي لك برضه increased mortality for thyroid, breast, colon, lung cancers. Okay. برضه في منطقة we've all heard about it, اللي هي Chernobyl. The nuclear power accident at Chernobyl in the former Soviet Union continues to exact its toll in the form of high cancer incidence in the surrounding areas. طبعا we know Chernobyl is an area that is still, يعني you cannot enter it due to the amount of radiation still present there. Okay. So I think in a couple of years, maybe, that's something I heard, yeah, I'm not sure, it's going to be safe to enter again. It is feared that radiation released from a nuclear power plant in Japan damaged by a massive earthquake and tsunami will result in significantly increased cancer incidence in the surrounding areas. Therapeutic, يعني هاي كلها معلومات عامة صراحة, يعني I'm not sure if they're going to ask about it, hopefully not, because it's not really that useful. Therapeutic irradiation of the head and neck can give rise to papillary thyroid cancers years later. So this is nice to know. Okay, this is really nice to know. You can it can help you in diagnosis in the future. So the irradiation of the head and neck بالذات يعني, okay, therapeutic irradiation, it can eventually give rise to papillary thyroid cancers years later. The oncogenic properties of ionizing radiation are related to its mutagenic effects as chromosome breakage, chromosomal rearrangements such as translocations and inversions, and point mutations. Okay, we must understand that the ionizing radiation لما يجي يضرب على DNA, it has the ability to change the DNA sequence. You need to change the DNA sequence. You need to cause a mutation. Okay, we heard about the T dimers مثلا لما يجي يرتبطوا مع بعض هيك. This is due to UV light. Okay, مثلا, this is just an example. Okay, so we must understand that the whole thing here is that the UV light or the radiation, it has high ionizing energy, which will cause damage to the DNA, causing these mutations. This is the whole thing يعني. Okay, موضوع بسيط كتير. وأكيد the shape of mutations differs. Could point mutations like frame shift, like silent, whatever يعني. It can be translocations, inversions, كتير أشياء. تمام. Biologically, double-stranded DNA breaks seem to be the most important form of damage, and this is caused by radiation. Okay, double-stranded DNA breaks, كسر two strands. Okay, natural UV radiation derived from the sun can cause skin cancers. We know that. عشان هيك بحكي لك لما واحد يكون ساكن بأماكن كتير فيها شمس, they always wear sunscreen, especially مثلا in Australia. In Australia, it's really dangerous there. مثلا. Okay, فبحكي لك هون melanomas. طبعا melanomas are more common for white people than black people. Okay, you would rarely expect a black person to have melanoma. Squamous cell carcinomas and basal cell carcinomas برضو. طيب. Risk factors اللي هم fair skin areas like Australia and New Zealand that have a large amount of sunlight there. Non-melanoma skin cancers are associated with total cumulative exposure to UV radiation. بيحكي لك if a skin cancer occurs and it is not melanoma, it has to do with the total UV exposure that you've had, an accumulated exposure to UV light. Melanomas are associated with intense intermittent exposure as occurs with sunbathing. يعني في خلينا نحكي تقطع بس برضه بنفس الوقت انت عم بتواصل بهذا الاشي. يعني بدك تعرف انه as a cumulative exposure to UV light يعني daily انت طالع بالشمس and so on, no sunscreen, no source of protection, and you get skin cancer, it typically won't be melanoma. لكن if you go out sunbathing, stay in the sun for long hours and so on, intense exposure هون نحكي عنها melanoma. Okay, UV light causes damage of DNA by forming pyrimidine dimers, which I just talked about. This type of DNA damage is repaired by the nucleotide excision repair pathway, and we studied this pathway actually. ومش ناوي اتذكرها صحيح بعد ما خلص في امتحان المولكيولر. With extensive exposure to UV light, the repair systems may be overwhelmed and skin cancers will be a result. بكل بساطة يعني خلينا نحكي you go out for a walk in the sun, you go out sunbathing, the UV light is going to cause these pyrimidine dimers to form. أول مرة خلص جسمك بصلحها, your body fixes it, nucleotide excision repair. تاني مرة نفس الشيء, ثالث مرة نفس الشيء, رابع مرة بيقول لك يا زلمة زودتها خلص بديش عشان أوريك شو يعني إني أنا ما أشتغلش. Your repair system is going to be overwhelmed, it's not going to work, and skin cancer will result. Patients with the inherited disease xeroderma pigmentosum have a defect in the nucleotide excision repair pathway and an increased risk of skin cancer. Okay, ليش؟ إنه the pathway that is responsible of protecting them against the pyrimidine dimers is basically not working. Okay. خلصنا. ضايل آخر شيء بنخلص. Yes, barely like a page or two. Viral and microbial oncogenesis. Oncogenic RNA viruses. إذا الآن viruses, هذول viruses بيعملوا these are RNA viruses مش DNA viruses. Okay, مثلا human T-cell leukemia virus type 1 HTLV type 1. إذا human T-cell leukemia virus. حلو. Is firmly implicated in the pathogenesis of cancer in humans. Really important. This virus can cause cancers. يعني احذر شو leukemia مكتوب من اسمه. It causes adult T-cell leukemia or lymphoma اللي هي ATLL, adult T-cell leukemia or lymphoma. A tumor that is endemic in certain parts of Japan, the Caribbean Basin, South America, and Africa, and found sporadically elsewhere, including the United States. Okay, so it can be an endemic in specific places, مثلا in Japan, Caribbean Basin. Okay, it's an endemic there because the virus is present. Like it sometimes can be found sporadically elsewhere. It can occur somewhere else. Okay, مثلا the United States. Worldwide, it is estimated that 15 to 20 million people are infected with the HTLV1. Similar to the HIV, which causes AIDS, HTLV1 has tropism for CD4 plus T cells. Okay, so that's why we call them human T-cell leukemia human T-cell leukemia virus type 1. Okay, طيب. So they have tropism for CD4 plus T cells. Yani tropism, they like binding to them. They like binding to them more than anything. So as a result, T cells is the major target of these neoplastic transformations. Human infection requires transmission of the infected T cells via sexual intercourse, blood products, or breastfeeding. Then first two, it acts actually like AIDS. It acts like like HIV virus, which causes AIDS. Okay. So this is really simple to get infected with this virus throughout sexual intercourse, blood products, or breastfeeding. Okay. And it can be transferred from mother to her baby. Leukemia develops in only 3 to 5% of the infected individuals, typically after a long latent period of 40 to 60 years. If you think about it, this virus is not really that harmful. It is obviously harmful. I'm not saying anything. I don't know anything about it. I'm just saying that 3 to 5% of the 15 or 20 million people develop leukemia. And it takes a really long period, 40 to 60 years. Okay. HTLV1 does not contain any oncogene. يعني هو نفس الفيروس doesn't have an oncogene. And no consistent pattern of pro-viral integration next to a proto-oncogene has been discovered. شو التخبيص اللي قاعد بقرأه؟ مش عارف. I'm just joking. هاي ال HTLV شو اسمه virus type 1. Okay. هذا الفيروس it itself doesn't have any oncogenes. No oncogenes in it يعني in its own viral or in its RNA يعني ما في oncogene جواته. Even when it enters to the human DNA and even when it somehow يعني خلينا نحكي causes integration next to a proto-oncogene, there's يعني this doesn't happen, okay? يعني it does not also do that. في viruses they enter and they manage to integrate themselves within an oncogene like RAS مثلا or like T53. هذا ال HTLV1 it doesn't do that, okay? So it does not contain oncogene and no consistent pattern of proviral integration to a proto-oncogene. In leukemic cells, however, viral integration shows a clonal pattern. حلو. إذن cells that are in leukemia cells, there is viral integration, there's a clonal pattern. Although the site of viral integration in host chromosomes is random, the site of integration is identical within all cells of a given cancer. يعني when I'm talking about leukemia, the integration part is only this part مثلا. تمام؟ Talking about another sort of cancer, شو ما كان, it's this part, okay? فهذا الاشي, this acted as a great indicator that the HTLV1, the HTLV1 was or is actually a carcinogen. تمام؟ إنه whenever it enters and if it causes a specific cancer, that type of cancer, let's say leukemia, will always have the HTLV1 on a specific gene. دائما نفس الجين. Okay? طيب. Always identical in all cells برضه بيكون بنفس المحل بيكون نفس السيلز على نفس الكروموسوم يعني that's it. It's not really that difficult. This would not occur if HTLV1 were merely a passenger that infects cells after transformation. It means that HTLV1 must have been present at the moment of transformation, placing it at the scene of the crime. Okay? طيب. The HTLV1 genome contains the GAG, POL, and ENV, and long-terminal repeat regions typical of all retrovirus. شو retrovirus? شو بتخبص؟ Retrovirus, virus that turns RNA to DNA, and its own RNA to its own DNA. تمام? This DNA will integrate with the chromosomal DNA or the human genome. عشان هيك هسه صار نحكي integrates شو بتخبص يعني. Okay, لا, it integrates within the DNA من خلال reverse transcriptase and so on يعني. In contrast to other leukemia viruses, it also contains another gene. هذا الجين نسميه TAX. تمام؟ إذا ال HTLV1 فيها genes مهمين GAG, POL و ENV. Okay? تمام. And long-term repeat regions typical of all retroviruses. هذا الشيء موجود بالretroviruses. لكن in contrast to other leukemia viruses, هذا بالذات, this one has TAX. Okay? Several aspects of HTLV1's transforming activity are attributable to TAX, the protein product of the TAX gene. And then there's a specific gene only present on the HTLV1 that produces the TAX protein. TAX is essential for viral replication. It stimulates transcription of the viral RNA from the 5' long terminal repeat. Then TAX is really important. ليه? It causes transcription of the viral RNA. تمام؟ إذا زي كأنه transcription factor مع polymerase مع كل شيء. It causes transcription of viral RNA. It also alters the transcription of several host cell genes and interacts with host cell signaling proteins. يعني هو شو بيعمل؟ بيروح على الفيروس causes transcription of the RNA of the virus. غير هيك it goes to our genome بتخربه. بس هي يعني okay. Anyways, what does it do? It increases the survival and growth of the infected cells. يعني I'm affecting the cell cycle. Okay. So here it's interacting with the PI3 kinase and thereby it will stimulate downstream signaling cascade which will promote شو survival وبرضه growth. Okay. So basically it will interact with PI3 kinase stimulating signaling cascade promoters that will cause cell survival, cell growth. احنا اصلا any cancer cell it wants to live long. كيف lives long? We talked about that in many lectures ago. The whole idea is we want it to undergo cellular proliferation, survival, and growth. Okay? طيب نفس proliferation growth. Upregulation of the expression of cyclin D and the repression of CDK inhibitors. بكل بساطة. What am I talking about here? بدك كانسر يصير، بدك الخلية تضل عايشة، بدك الخلية تكبر. You want the cell to grow. You will need cyclin D. Cyclin D activates the cell cycle. هو اللي ببلش. Okay? برضه you need to repress the expression of the CDK inhibitors. هذول الcyclin dependent kinase inhibitors. هذول inhibitors they inhibit the cyclins and the CDKs. They inhibit يعني the whole cell growth. تمام. So a cancer cell will inhibit them. بس they'll inhibit the inhibitor. هذا أنا بحكيها يعني. TAX can activate the transcription factor, nuclear factor kappa B, promotes the survival of many cell types including lymphocytes. بكل بساطة the TAX has the ability to activate this transcription factor, goes into the nucleus and promotes cellular survival, okay? Like lymphocytes. Increased genomic instability. يعني it interferes with our own DNA and our DNA repair mechanism. So obviously it is going to cause genomic instability. تمام? Okay, to inhibit checkpoints and so on. In line with these defects, HCLV1 associated leukemias tend to be highly aneuploid. Aneuploidy شو يعني? The occurrence of one or more extra or missing chromosomes in a cell or organism. Okay? شو يعني aneuploid؟ إذا في عندك one or more extra or missing chromosomes in a cell or organism. يعني instead of having the same numbers of chromosomes, you'd have either more or less. تمام؟ Okay. really easy. يعني هذه الاشياء اللي بتعملها التاكس والاتش تي ال في 1. اوكي really simple. مش راح اعيد كثير عشان الواحد يلحق يخلص يعني. you have to finish the material يعني. hopefully you're not gonna need any repetition this time. it's really easy lecture كله فعليا ماخذين زمان. oncogenic DNA viruses عندك ال HPV human papilloma virus, Epstein-Barr virus, Kaposi sarcoma virus. it's a type of herpes virus. برضو it's called herpes 8, okay whatever. Polyoma virus which is called Merkel cell virus and hepatitis B. okay. حنبلش الآن بهيومن بابيلوما فيروس. هيك يعني بنخلص اللي هي بنخلص lecture 8 ندخل على lecture 9 بعدها مباشرة بمحاضرة تانية. Human papilloma virus, it's associated with benign squamous papilloma or warts. نعرف إنه it causes warts. الواحد بصير يطلع هيك جسمه هيك زي warts or whatever. Genital warts, cervical cancer, and oropharyngeal cancer. Okay, so depending on the type of human papillomavirus, it can cause specific sorts of cancers. Cervical cancer is really an important, human papillomavirus is an important cause of cervical cancer. طيب من وين اجت الابيليتي هاي؟ هلا we must understand that there are oncoproteins called E6 and E7. Okay, HPV virus is related to the expression of these oncoproteins. Okay? طيب. Oncoproteins يعني they cause cancer. مبدئيا they bind to RB and P53. شو هذا ال RB? The retinoblastoma gene, tumor suppressor gene. And P53, tumor suppressor gene. برضو they inhibit the inhibitors. They inhibit the CDKIs 21 and 27. Okay? E6 and E7, they from high-risk HPV also activate cyclins E and A. أول شيء they inhibit the inhibitors of the cell cycle. يعني they promote the cellular growth. As a result, مش يعني as a result, these cells they can be cancerous. برضو it activates cyclin E and A. شو يعني activates them؟ يعني it's not waiting for a signal from cyclin D or the checkpoint to proceed with the cell cycle. Okay, it will always happen لأنه إيش عندك cyclin E cyclin A. Oncogenic activities of E6 يعني بدك تفرق E6 عن E7. فحجيب لك مثلا which of the following is correct. هذا عن E6 هذا عن E7. by the way برضو الأسئلة I'm not going to solve them. Anyone that needs the question I'll probably put them in a separate video يعني لحالهم عشان نخلص المادة الناس تقدر تحل لحالها. okay. طيب إنه في ناس تحب تحل لحالها يعني. Okay, oncogenic, so that's why I'll do a separate video. Anyways, oncogenic activity of E6. The E6 protein binds to and mediates the degradation of P53. حلو. إذا بكل بساطة بيمسك حاله ال E6 بينط على ال P53 tumor suppressor gene and destroys it. بس هاي هي. Okay? And the P53 proteins that arise from the gene. It stimulates the expression of telomerase contributing to the immortalization of cells. يا عيني شو اللي بيعمله؟ We took non-homologous end joint repair. بكل بساطة بيكون في عندك a cell that is messed up. It has dicentric centromeres. You should probably know that by now if you're watching this lecture. The cell here is going to have a bridge fusion cycle. Okay, the bridge fusion cycle or the break fusion cycle, I think, whatever, I forgot its name. The whole point is that here the cell either dies or it reactivates telomerase. Okay, it reactivates telomerase. بيحكي لك هون إنه E6 actually has the ability to activate the telomerase. So someone with the human papillomavirus might have the ability to produce a telomerase. The telomerase protein or the telomerase enzyme once again. Okay, so it will cause immortalization of the cells. ولا يمكن يموتوا. E6 from high-risk HPV types has a higher affinity for P53 than E6 from low-risk HPV types. Low-risk HPV types اللي هم ممكن يعملوا بس benign warts. High risk, the ones that can cause cancers, okay, like cervical, oropharyngeal, whatever. تمام? For the E6 from the high risk ones has higher affinity for P53 عشان هيك it's خلينا نحكي it's more carcinogenic يعني خلينا نحكي it can cause cancer easier more يعني more usually than other. Okay. E7 احنا حكينا طبعا the whole idea is you want to destroy RB and P53. P53 مين بيمسكها E6. طب RB retinoblastoma gene بيمسكه ال E7. So it binds to the RB, displaces the E2F transcription factor. طبعا they're normally sequestered by the RB. This will promote progression through the cell cycle. هلا we have E2F هذا transcription factor رابط عليه الريتنوبلاستوما بروتين. تمام؟ الريتنوبلاستوما بروتين شو بصير؟ بيجي عندك ال E7 بيكحش ال RB it causes the dissociation فبصير عندك اللي هو ال E2F مربوط مع ال E7 and this مش مربوط. The whole idea is that the E7 will kick out the RB, displaces it. Okay, maybe it binds, maybe it's I'm not really sure, I have no idea honestly. وشو اللي بصير? This will cause this will cause extra activation of the cell cycle. تمام؟ طيب. E7 proteins from high-risk HPV have a higher affinity for RB than from low-risk نفس السؤال فوق. E7 also inactivates the CDK inhibitors P21, P27. إذن we can basically say that P53 E6 و RB P21, P27 هذا كله E7. Okay? طيب. It inactivates them and binds and presumably activates cyclin E and A. High-risk HPVs encode oncogenic proteins that inactivate RB and P53, activate cyclin, CDK complexes, and combat cellular senescence. And in general, we're talking about the high-risk sorts of or types of human papillomavirus. بحكي لك on the primacy of HPV infection in the causation of cervical cancer is confirmed by the effectiveness of HPV vaccines in preventing it. Infection with HPV itself is not sufficient for carcinogenesis, okay? And full-blown transformation requires acquisition of mutations in host cancer genes such as RAS. يعني إنه بس الفيروس لحاله يكون موجود, it's not really enough, other mutations must occur, okay? Hope you enjoyed this lecture ويلا يعطيكم العافية.